Welcome to the show. Hi, I'm Randy Jeffers, and we are live from the entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. Well, we have a really special show. We have my friend Charles Hopkins here. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Well, we have a great show. We're going to talk about racism. And when I asked Charles to be my guest, I said, Charles, are you brave? And do you remember what you told me?
I told you I'm willing to do it, but I'm going to come from a black perspective.
And you said something about the president. You remember that?
No, I didn't say nothing about the president. I said I would never put the P word in front of Trump's name.
That's right. Okay. Now, let me just give a little history here, because you and I are friends. Our wives are friends. Matter of fact, they were hanging out together today.
That's correct.
We've been to your house many times. You've been to my house many times. We go to the same church. We have a lot of friends in common. And so, in many ways, we're very similar. We have a lot of similarities. But in other ways, we're very different. And
that's correct.
Yeah. And so, I want to talk about that, because understanding our friends, really understanding them, is something that a lot of people will never do. They do surface things, right? But understanding why it is that people think in a certain kind of a way. And you have a really interesting perspective. As you mentioned, you want to talk about it from a black perspective, and obviously you're black, and so you have that perspective. But you're also different in that you live in Las Vegas now, but you grew up in Chicago. And whereabouts in Chicago did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Chicago. I was born in the 40s. I raised in the 50s and 60s in Chicago. And, like we were discussing before, my perspective on Chicago in that period of time was community-based. In my community, everything was owned by black people. The grocery stores, the shoe stores, the theaters, and everything. Mm-hmm. But what seemed to happen, large companies came in and took over. Mm. And they ran everything out. So just like I feel, certain things that happened in the early 60s was detrimental to black people. And I've seen that. But see, I've always been involved with politics. And in my neighborhood, it was all black. It was white neighborhoods, Polish neighborhoods, and Ukrainian neighborhoods. And at certain times of night, you couldn't go in a different neighborhood. Yeah. Just like white people couldn't come in my neighborhood, and we couldn't go in the white neighborhoods, because they would jump on you. And I mean, just like Martin Luther King, when he was coming to Chicago, he said Chicago was one of the worst places he's been in the United States. And we know, as people, as young kids, that was true.
Well, Chicago is really different. It really is unique in that it has all these pockets of ethnic communities, right?
Oh, correct.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's the difference between Chicago and Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. Because some of my friends right now might say, hey, what neighborhood do you stay in? And I have to get into perspective. It's no racist neighborhoods.
Right.
It's the funniest thing, because you can live next door to anybody. But in Chicago, it's neighborhood based.
Yeah.
It's very few neighborhoods that's integrated. But I was raised in integrated neighborhoods, and I was raised in all black neighborhoods. And the big difference was black neighborhoods would get the worst of everything. In the white neighborhoods, they would pick up the garbage twice a week. In the black neighborhoods, they would pick it up once a week. In the white neighborhoods, because I moved in white neighborhoods, and they would have bulk pickups, I could call the alderman's office and tell them, hey, I got some stuff that needed to be removed, and they would ask me when I wanted it removed. In the black neighborhoods, you get it once a year, if that. And so that was my perspective. Now, I've talked to different people, just like me and you had discussions on races. And one thing that my pastor said, that people from different perspectives should get together and talk.
Right.
Because that's the only way we're going to find out, where everybody's really coming from. And so I like talking to Randy, because he's a friend of mine. Like he said, my wife's a friend of mine. But we have a different perspective on politics.
We do. And it's kind of interesting, because we're both married to people from different ethnicities than we are, right?
Correct. That's why I made a statement. That's why one day I made a statement to Randy that it's certain white people that don't like him. Because he's married to somebody that's not, of the same race. And I know parts of Mississippi that I used to be in, that they would run him out just like they would run me out. And that's something that I tried to get him to understand. And my perspective is this: like me and him discussed Trump. And like I tell him, as a black man and a minority in the United States, there's no way on God's green earth that he can explain to me that this man is not a racist. And he's a racist. Now, I'm not going to discuss it with him because we are friends. I'm not going to argue with him about it. I'm not going to discuss it because he got his point of view and I got mine.
So let's talk about that subject for a second. What do you think it is that Trump has done that makes you think he's racist?
Well, first thing is in 1924, his father got arrested working with the Ku Klux Klans in New York. Now, me and you discussed that, and you said you didn't hit it, and you didn't. Basically, I don't know if I told you to research it. Now, in Trump's life, Trump told his people not to rent to minorities, and his actions even today. Now, what happened in Vegas over the weekend was a tragedy to me. But see, as a black man, when I woke up, I realized something. I thank God. I mean, I was happy and sad about the situation because I was sad because all these people lost their lives and all these people were hurt. But then I thank God because I know what Trump would have did if it would have been a minority. Now, I personally feel that this is white terrorism in the United States. But we don't hear it on the air. We don't hear it from the politicians. But that's the way, as a black man, and I'm very sure I'm not alone because I've discussed it with people. Why would Trump be on this if it was a black man or it was a minority? He would be saying this is racism and this is terrorism. But see, I can't say it's racist.
You're talking about if the killer was a black man?
Yes, it would.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Or if it was any other minority, this is what he would be saying.
And what do you think Trump would say then?
I think Trump would be on this like, this is domestic terrorism. Now, in the time that Trump has been in office, have Trump ever said anything negative about when somebody white has shot people and killed them? No, he hasn't.
Well, I think he came down pretty hard on this guy. He was talking about he's the worst kind of person there is. And
well, you know what? I know people worse than in my life. I know people worse than this fellow. I can't say this fellow was a racist because I know he knew mostly 99% of the people who's going to be at this conference was white. So I can't say he was a racist, but I can say he was an American terrorist. He killed all these people. Now, just like in Florida, the first thing it is before he even found out what it is, just like in cross seas, before he found out what nationality he is, he was saying terrorism. Now, why he can't say that this was American terrorism? See, because I know, my mother lives in Mississippi, and I've talked to people in Mississippi, and I've talked to a lot of older people, and they explain things to me about racism that I didn't really know. And what it is Trump is a racist. Now, and Trump lies. And I don't understand why the people on the air won't say, hey, this man is lying. Or this man is racist. I really don't understand. But as a black man in the United States, I understand it. I really do. Because
tell us about that. What is it that you understand? Tell me.
Like I said, I was raised in the 50s and 60s. And what happened, like I stated earlier, black people owned everything that we did. Although we was red line, we couldn't really get out of the neighborhoods we were in. It was just certain situations, just like the situation that's going on in St. Louis right now. Now, I remember when I was a young man, when we get stopped by the police had throwaway guns. Uh-huh. This was a natural thing, as a teenager in Chicago, I would get stopped every other day. Sometimes we would get taken over to white neighborhoods and get dropped off. They would literally drop us off and they would go up and say, hey, you know what? We got black people running this way, and they would chase us. So the things that's going on in the United States from a black perspective, I'm almost 70 years old. And there's things that happen, like I didn't never think it would be a black mayor in Chicago, but I was really shocked it was. Now, I didn't think it ever in my life be a black president of the United States. But Obama came in at the right time in the right situation. Now, I can't say black folks and minorities voted in because a lot of white folks voted for him, which I really loved. But it was a minority of people. Now, some of Trump voters that was racist couldn't understand a black man in the White House. and they never would. And they voted for Trump because it was a black man in the White House. Now, when Trump went in the White House, the first thing he did was he's trying to wipe away everything Obama did. Not because it's good, not because it's bad, because it was a black man that started the programs.
So you really believe that all the changes is not because of the philosophy, but because Obama was a black person.
Correct. Yes, I do.
And what do you tell me what you base that on?
What I base that on is Trump. Trump. When Trump come in the White House, the first thing he said is, "Hey, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change that." Like, I was looking at the news and they was remodeling the White House. Be honest with you, a lot of my friends, we was looking at that as, hey, he trying to get all the blackness out of the White House. Now, I can't say it was true, but this is what we believe as black people. Now, if any policy that he started, Trump is trying to change. Not because it's good for people, not because it's bad for people, because Obama's name is on it.
Well, you do know they are diametrically opposed in the philosophy.
He don't have a philosophy. What is it? I would like for you, as a friend of mine, to tell me what his philosophy is.
Well, that's a long story. Let's say that.
No, it's not. It's not
let's
a
say
long
that
story.
for another time. But let's go back to you were born in the 40s. You said.
Correct.
And what year?
48.
In 48. So you remember the 50s probably pretty well.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and the 50s were. I remember the late 50s. Not so much the early 50s. But I was born in 53. But how has things changed since those days?
Well, you know what?
What was a typical black family like in those days in Chicago?
Well, in Chicago, and you know what? It was beautiful to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was beautiful because, like I said, blacks owned everything. And then what happened? We could go to the beaches. We could go to because we owned everything. I mean, it was a beautiful life. We didn't know we were poor.
Did you know you were black?
Oh yeah. Yes, I did.
Do you remember the first time you knew you were black?
Oh, correct. When we went downtown.
What happened in that experience?
Well, what happened when we went downtown? The first thing happened was they said, "Niggas, what you doing down here?" And what we said is, "Why are we down here?"
Were you with your parents? Or
No, we was a group of friends.
So you were a teenager or something?
No, we was about 7, 8, 9, 10 years old.
Oh, okay.
But it is to see we got on the bus and we rode downtown, and that's what was brought to us. But see, the neighborhood I brought, like I say, it was neighborhood-based communities. Now, I was born around Comiskey Park on 37th and State. So Comiskey Park back then was on 35th. On the other side of the railroad track was all white. That was Mayor Daley's neighborhood. On our side was mostly 99% black. So what happened is they couldn't come on our side and we couldn't come on their side. Now, people could walk back and forth to the baseball games. Back then, if you was a black person, because back then it used to be Sears Roebuck, Campbell's Soup used to be on 35th. Now, at a certain time of day or night, you could travel that way. But after working hours started finished, you couldn't go. And just like in our neighborhood, we didn't allow white people. That's just the way it was, because we looked at it as, you jump on us, we're going to jump on you.
Were there intermarriages in those
days?
days?
Yeah, it was all, I had uncles go with white girls.
So if you had a white wife, for instance, she could live in the neighborhood?
Oh, yeah, correct. Well, one of my main friends right now, Marion Short, he's staying in Iowa. His mother and father was white, and she lived in our building. It wasn't nothing to see white people in our neighborhood. But back then,
a stranger couldn't come in.
Oh, yeah.
If they're white.
Oh, yeah, because we figured they coming to see somebody. Whoever they coming to see somebody black, so we wouldn't mess with them. I mean, just like you, if you came over to our building, you might be coming to see me. You wasn't in no harm. They'd ask you who you coming to see. And if you give them a name, you ain't got no problem. But if you were just walking down the street, that's a problem. But see, the difference was, we couldn't go over in Mayor Daley's neighborhood no matter who we was going to see. We was going to get jumped on. But life was a lot better when we owned everything. And what happened is when Martin Luther King came down 35th Street one time, he was saying, "Hey, you know what? We're marching over here, and we'd like for you to march, y'all to march with us," the gentleman I was with. And we told him we can't march over there. We just can't. Because there's nowhere in the world we're going to let nobody throw us a rock at us. Ain't nowhere in the world we're going to let nobody throw a brick at us. And ain't nowhere in the world we're going to let somebody spit on us. So we were more inclined with Malcolm X. if you hit me, we're going to hit you back. But later on in my life, I found out something. I was in Mississippi in a small town, and I talked to this elderly lady. She was about 80-something years old, and she changed my whole perspective on race. And when I left that gas station talking to the elderly lady, I was really shocked at myself, because my perspective on race changed drastically. And it was, no matter what color the skin is how they treat you. And when I realized that, my whole life changed, because I looked at race with a different perspective. And it changed because I look at it this way. If you treat me like a gentleman, I'm going to treat you like a gentleman, if you're black or white, no matter what color you are. But I appreciate the life I've lived because I could teach my kids the difference. And that's one of my greatest things. I taught my kids, you respect people for who they are. Now, as far as, I got cousins married to white people. I got cousins married to Oriental people. All my life, I've seen white people in our neighborhoods, white women and white men. But I knew in certain neighborhoods when I was coming out, I couldn't go in. But I didn't want to go in them because it was beautiful in my neighborhood. Now, when integration started, basically I feel that was the problem. Integration and projects. Because in 58, some projects, statewide projects, was built right across from me, and I thought that was one of the greatest things in the world, that people had a nice place to live. But then I realized one thing: you can't put that many poor people in the same building, in the same area. Because I could see over a period of years where it went down. And I remember when Aid to Dependent Children came in. I thought it was the best thing in the world, but then looking back on it, that was really destructive to the black community. Because what it did, it ran the black man out of the house. Because my uncle and auntie was on it, and the funniest thing, my uncle had most of his clothes down our house because the inspectors would come through. They would go through your washrooms. They'd look and see if you had extra toothbrushes. They would look under your beds. And then looking back on it, that was the worst thing that could have happened to black people, because what it is, it took our independence away.
It encouraged, you got paid more if you didn't. If you were by yourself.
Oh, correct. Yeah. But what that did was break up the family.
Let me ask you a question. Who do you think it was, the conservative or the more liberals, the Democrats or Republicans, who put those policies into effect?
I think it was the Democrats put it into effect.
I think they did it for what reason?
Well, I really don't know, but see, what it is some of the policies they put in effect, and some of the policies that the Democrats are putting in effect now are not good for people. But then I look at it, the perspective I have on politicians now is all of them the same. There's no difference between Democrats and Republicans because each one of them are looking out for themselves now. They're not looking out for the people.
There is a swamp, isn't there?
Yeah, and I wish he'd have went in and cleaned the swamp out. But the swamp is worse than it was because the people that he put in charge.
Well, it's not over. We'll see what we'll see what happens. So, let me ask you a question. When you're around your black friends, let's say your old buddies that you had one here recently that came to visit you, right?
Correct.
Is there a sort of a black language that black guys talk that's a little different than you'd talk in a normal?
Oh, correct.
Is there?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
How does it differ?
What the difference is because I could say some words to you that you wouldn't understand what it was, but they would. See, just like I'm very sure in the white communities, in the Spanish communities, in the Oriental communities, there's certain things and certain people where they can relate to each other. Now, certain things I could say to one of my ex-business partners that I wouldn't accept from nobody else. But it's just a language that we were brought up with. See, just like in my church we have a small group, and one of the gentlemen from the small group is from Wyoming, and me and him have discussions because what my pastor said was, hey, you know what? It's nice for different people from different areas to get together. Yeah. Now we have discussions, but we don't think nothing alike. Just like in Vegas when they passed that gun initiative, he was upset because of the gun initiative, and I told him, I don't believe in guns. Do I believe people should have guns? Yes, I do. And he was upset because the stuff that the politicians put in this bill. And I said, well, you know what? Them politicians put that in that bill to get people like you upset, because they could have just made a downright bill. We're gonna do background checks, or we're not. But they put all this other stuff in the bill to get people upset. That's why I say all politicians are the same. What they're looking out for is to get reelected.
Let me ask you a question. We went to you and I and our wives, and there was some other people that were there to a movie this week called Mully, and I highly recommend this movie. It's a great movie.
Yes, it's
about a guy that was from Kenya, and we have both of us. I think we have. They're all mutual friends, but I have a friend that's from Egypt. He was a diplomat, came here. He's now lives here in the U.S. Born in Egypt, though. Have another friend that was born in Ethiopia. He's a medical doctor, lives here in Las Vegas. He goes to our church. I have another friend that is from South Africa, and he's Caucasian. I joke with my two friends. I see them every week from Ethiopia and from South Africa. They're the real African Americans, because they came here and they're Americans, but they're born in Africa, right? So when you were watching that movie, and this guy's from Kenya, Mully was from Kenya, right? Do you feel an affinity to Africa at all? Because it's been many generations. I don't know how many generations your family's been here, but probably a lot, right?
Oh yeah, because my background is, and my mother and father was Creole and Black and Indian.
Yeah.
Now, I really appreciated the movie because of the perspective that he depended on God.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was the beauty of the movie to me. Now, as far as Africans are concerned, you got your good Africans and you got your bad Africans. Because sometimes Africans get over here, and by them being born in Africa, they think they're better than anybody else. Not just blacks in America, blacks in the Caribbean, blacks anywhere. And I personally feel my heart is in Africa, but
You feel that way?
Yeah, I feel that way. But see, I was born in the United States.
Right.
And in the United States, all of us come from someplace else. The only original people who were here was Indians and Mexicans.
Well,
those are the original Americans. Now, like I said, my grandmother and my grandfather were Black and Creole, Black and Indian. And I feel I'm American. I got close friends that's Africans, and we discuss that. And I tell them, I like to go visit Africa, but I wouldn't want to live there. Now, coming up, I've met some Africans that really felt that they were better because they were originally from Africa. And we wasn't, because some of the discussions we had. But me being a Christian, all people are my brothers. All of us are Americans. Now, when people make statements about go back where you come from, I always used to say,
That's Chicago, isn't it?
Yeah. Or if everybody want to go back where they come from, everybody in America go back to where they came from and leave it to the Indians and the Mexicans. Because where we at right now used to belong to the Mexicans. Texas used to belong to the Mexicans. California used to belong to the Mexicans. So when people make statements about go back to where?
But you said your heart is there.
Oh, yeah.
Africa. What? Talk about that.
Well, see, my heart is there because deep down in my heart, I'm a black man. I'm a black man from Africa, ancestrally in America. Just like Italians, just like Irish, just like Polish, just like Ukrainian. They relate to where they come from. They may be third or fourth generation, but they still relate to where they originated, where their grandmother and grandfather originated. Just like I said, I'm part Indian, I'm part Creole, and I'm part black. So I relate to the United States.
Now the black part of you, because I think you identify as a black man, right?
Correct.
And so the blackness, do you view that as, is that a positive thing? Is it helpful to you in life, or is it more on the negative side, where you have to work harder than everybody else? How do you feel about that?
What I feel about that is, see, I'm a biomedical engineer. I retired from GE Electronics, and I always knew, and the black people that was in the same field I was, we always knew we had to know a lot more. A lot more. Well, when I graduated from electronics school, most of the good jobs didn't go to the blacks. It was just 4 blacks who graduated at the same time I did from the school I graduated from. Now, being a black man in America has always been rough. Educated or not, because I personally feel, and if you talk to any black man, they feel that they need to know a lot more to get the same position. And in my field, I knew I had to know. It ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Any field, anything that a black surgeon, he has to know more, because he's tested more. If you're a white person in biomedical engineering, they already assume that you know more. You know, one of the funniest things happened in my life when the hospital I was working at. You know, I don't want to say no names, but the director came into our department, and he sat down and he was looking. He said, "Wait a minute, ho." And Bobby said, "What's the problem?" And he said, "You know what? Ain't nothing in this department but blacks." It was me, Bobby, and there's another young lady that worked in the department, and we got to laughing. And we told him, we said, "Hey, you know what? Let's ask you a question." He said, "What's that?" He said, "Have you had any complaints about this equipment in this hospital?" He said, "No." He said, "Have you had any complaints about the biomedical engineering department?" He said, "No," because he said, "You know what? You in safe hands, because each one of us, by being black, have to know a lot more than anybody white that's in the same position." And that's true.
Well, let's talk about that. One of the people I admire a lot is a black man, Dr. Ben Carson, and I want to get your perspective on him, because I know you have some strong feelings about that. Talk to me about that.
Well, my perspective is this way. I look at it this way. In life, in my grandmother's life, and my grandfather's life, and all during everybody's black life, you know, and when black folks in the field used to run, it wasn't a white man told them they was running. It was somebody black that went to the boss man and said, "Boss man, this is what's happening." Now, as an individual, I respect him for his knowledge as a brain surgeon. As an individual, I can't respect him as a black man. I just can't.
And what are the reasons? Tell me.
What the main? Well, you know, as a Christian, I respect him because he's a Christian. Mm-hmm. I respect him for that. But as a black man, I can't respect him as a man.
How would you like to see him change?
You know, that respect? Well, you know what? To be honest with you, I'm almost 70 years old, and my perspective is already set.
He's about the same age.
He's about the same age. Yeah. So you know what? He's not going to change. And it's not.
But if he could wave a wand and change him, how would you?
If I could change him, I would. The statements he made, like he's talking about, I stabbed somebody in the belt. I did this and I did this when I was coming up, and people that have really been in certain situations like that know he was lying. They know he was just saying something to be a certain way.
So you don't take him at his word?
Oh no! Oh no! Because the life I lived, you know, like I said, if it wasn't for Jesus, Jesus and that old lady changed my life. Because
okay, but let's just say he took liberties with that, and let's say that wasn't true. Let's say he was lying. What other things about him would you say that?
See.
Is it the part of the politics?
Oh no, his politics. I mean, you know what? I don't think he's good for black folks. I really don't.
In what way?
In what way? Because you know what? When I was coming up, the worst thing in the world could happen to me and my friends would be a white policeman and a black policeman pull up on you and put you against the wall. You know why? The black policeman is gonna beat the hell out of you to show the white person that he ain't prejudiced. And the first thing we would tell him and what we'd get beat for, we would tell him, "Hey, you can't go over the neighborhood and beat them white folks like that." See, what I found out about life is just because you got a dark skin don't mean you for black people. Just like if you got a white skin, you don't necessarily mean you for white people. You know, just like I made the statement, Obama got elected by black and white. That was the beauty. Now, people like him, nah, He's not going to change, and I'm not going to worry about him changing. Only thing it is, I'm going to leave him up to God, because I look at it this way. There's nowhere in the world he's going to look out for black people. That's black people.
Can you give an example of something that he's done that you think is harming to black people?
The position he's put in, he don't know nothing about that position. Just like I made the statement earlier. As a black man in the field I was in, I felt that I needed to know, and I know I needed to know more than anybody in my field. I just know it. Any black person is in any position that would tell you, hey, I have to know it because I get tested a lot. Now, if he's a surgeon, he don't know nothing about housing and urban development. What do he know? He don't know nothing. He got to depend on the people that's under him. He's making all the rules. It's just nowhere in the world. He's in the, he should have told him, no thank you, like he started to do it first. No thank you. Put me in a position that I'm familiar with. Not put me in a position so I can say I got a black man in my cabinet. And that's what he is. He's a black man in his cabinet. You go ask him about urban development or anything, he don't have a clue.
So you think he should have been a Democrat?
No.
No?
No. Because I got some friends that are Republicans that's black. It's just a philosophy. I mean, I'm not going to just like you're a friend of mine. I love you. But we don't see eye to eye on some things. But a lot of things we see eye to eye on. I don't try to change you. I give you a good different perspective. Like I told you, and I'll tell you again. What you need to do is research it like I did. See, in my field, I was a researcher. I research stuff because people, the nurses, the directors would come to us and ask us about different equipment. We research it. So my man is to research whatever it is. Now, just like Ben Carson, he's a great surgeon. He's a great surgeon, but he don't know nothing about housing.
So you think he probably should have stuck with what he was doing?
Yeah, I think he should have passed on the position. I think he should have told him
Surgeon
nothing.
General, maybe.
Yeah, that's more in his land, in his field.
I see. Okay.
That's more in his field, not housing and urban development. Because see, here's what's happening. What I found, like I said, I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and what we found out and what we discussed when black folks and friends of mine, we all get together, is what happened in Chicago is this: the Board of Education, different departments in Chicago, what they did, they ran them in the ground and then they turned them over to black people, so they could point to them and say, see, the Board of Education is going down the tubes. Who's in charge? Matter of fact, one of the first black, Dr. Bird, one of the first black people in charge of the Board of Education. He used to be my principal at Inglewood High School. He rose to that position, but by the time he got the position, they had ran it in the ground. And that's the problem, just like him. What they're going to do, he's in there, he's going to destroy the Housing and Urban Development Department because he don't know what he's doing. And the first thing they're going to do is they're going to point to him and say, see, we put a black man in charge, and what did he do?
Let's talk about crime. The prisons, as you know, have a predominant number of black men that are locked up.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of my
way
friends.
More than their fair share in terms of the numbers.
And a lot of my friends.
What do you think the reason is for that?
What it is what I really think now. At one time, it was just to get black people off the street so they couldn't vote. Because the first thing they do, they put a felony on a black person.
So you think there's some sort of intentional?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like I stated. See, you know what? One of the best things that ever happened to me in my life was I went to the military. But back then at that time, everybody was going to Vietnam, and in Chicago, if you do a petty crime, you go before a judge, and you know what the judge told you? You go to the service and you do 5 years. And that was the way it is. Right. In during that time, I got drafted, but I realized one thing: that was the best thing ever happened to me in my life, was going to the service, because then I learned the fellowship of dealing with different races. I mean, where true love was. If I had my way, everybody in the United States would do just like Israel. Everybody would serve for the fellowship. Yeah. I really do, because that made me a stronger person. Because in Vietnam, it didn't make no difference what color you were, and today it don't make no difference what color you do mentally to me, because it's a brotherhood.
How about you're from Chicago, and not too far away next door is Milwaukee.
Mhm.
and there was a sheriff there. He's just resigned, probably going to greener pastures and get involved
I
in
hope so.
politics.
I hope so.
What's your thoughts about David Clark?
David Clark, you gotta be kidding. Like, remember I explained to you when I was coming up, the worst thing you could have is a black person and a white police pull up on you?
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't want to go to David Clark's jail if I was black. Because if you white, you're going to get treated differently. Just like the people that died in his jail. I mean, what you'll find out, I mean, what I know as a black man, just because you got somebody black over you don't mean that you're going to get the best. They're going to treat you like dirt at sometimes. And I would hate to go to one of his jails.
You don't really want to go to any jail.
No, that's the truth. You don't want to go to any jail. But see, here's what the problem is. This individual, if you see you heard, because I don't really, I really don't know, because I know him. I know him whether I see him on TV. And the only thing crossing my mind is he's got to be out his man. Now, if they wouldn't have protested so much, Trump was going to put him in this cabinet just to have another black person in there, or find a position for him. But now he can go into politics all he wants, but I guarantee you, he's not going to get black votes, although he's going to get some. But he's not going to win if he has to vote, depend on the black vote, because most black people know people like that. Like I said before, in my environment, when I was coming up, either you was from the field or you was from the house. And he's one of the worst house people you can get, because he's the type of person, he will beat you to death to show somebody else I'm not prejudiced. Now I really think he's bad. I really do.
Now, Charles, you grew up in a time that's long gone. You and I both did, actually, when we were kids.
Yeah,
Those days are not here anymore. It's a whole different world. And is some of your thinking reflective of the time period that we grew up in, or do you think it's still that way?
No, you know what? Life is better. I mean, you know what? Like I said, the period of my time is when I grew up with blacks owned everything, and I see everything got taken away by corporations. But the times are better, because I got a saying: when my generation die off, the world's gonna be a lot better. That's what I tell my kids. I always tell my kids, I tell my grandkids, I say, hey, when our generation pass on, this world will be a lot better, because they did vote for Obama. They got a greater perspective. See, racism, you ain't born with racism. You taught racism. And nowadays, people get along better. The younger people get along better. The problem is the older people projecting their perspective about racism. Now, when we die off, the world's going to be a lot better. A lot better.
Interesting perspective.
Yeah.
So back to crime, because the majority of the black men that are in prison now, and women, I suppose, too, but it's black on black crime.
Correct.
And why is that, do you think?
Well, you know, like I stated before, when they built the projects, what tend to happen is they put poor people on poor people. And like I said, when I looking back on, that's one of the worst things it could be, because I look at it this way: if you in poverty, and it's parts of Chicago that I know that's deep in poverty, it's nothing to do. When I was coming up, you had basketball, you had parks, you had different after school activities you could go to. We don't have that anymore. In Chicago, they got basketball leagues. They're trying to start up now, but when I was coming up, it was a normal thing to go to the field house after school. You could do more. It was more to do. You could go to the lakefront. It was basketball teams. It was baseball teams. It was football teams. It was activities for the young folks. Nowadays, there's nothing for them to do but just stand around on the corner.
You get in trouble.
Yeah, because just like I said, there's some friends of mine that lived in the projects, and they said, hey, you know what, I went down there to visit them when I went back to Chicago, and they said, hey, you know what, come on up. I told them, no, I'm not coming up there. And they said, man, ain't nobody gonna mess with you. I said, no. I said, you gotta understand something. It's not your kids. It's not your kids' kids. It's their kids I'm worried about. Because they'll jump on me and rob me just like they will anybody else. Why? Because this is the environment they were raised up in. I mean, you know, when I was coming up, we used to fight, but we didn't shoot people. We go head up. We fight each other, but we wouldn't shoot people. We wouldn't cut people. And the way life is now, it's destructive. But see, it's the environment people brought up in. It's no baseball leagues in Chicago anymore. It's no softball leagues in Chicago anymore. It's no nothing. There's no swimming leagues because you know what? It's no more field houses where you could go to and you can have different activities to fill your time. What do poor people have to do but stand on the corners and sell drugs? And like I always said, I don't know nobody black until I looked at TV recently that bring drugs into the black community. We don't have airplanes to fly that stuff over here. We don't have the ships to bring that stuff over here. You know, and like it is, what's happening right now, when I was coming up, I've always known heroin in the neighborhood. It was drug addicts in my neighborhood all my life. They used to be in the building, they used to be walking around, they used to do everything. But see, the problem is they get locked up. The problem occurred is when the drugs went out to the suburbs. When the drugs went to the suburbs, what happened is they would give them treatment. If you were black, you were going to jail. You know, that's why the jails was filled. And then just like the complexes now, the facilities for jails, they building more and more and more. Now, who do you think they're going to put in there? Who's going in there?
Well, you know, we're about out of time, and I think we need to. We could do this for 3 or 4 or 5 hours and keep talking about it. But I want to get your perspective on one other thing, because as you know, right now there is an issue in the National Football League, and you have people that are kneeling.
Correct.
And it started with Kaepernick.
Mm-hmm.
And what are your feelings about that?
My feelings about that is this: I went to Vietnam, '69 and '70. To fight the Viet Cong in Vietnam. Now, I love the flag. I love what the flag represented, but I also love the freedom to go with the flag. Now, if somebody want to kneel at a football game, let them. I will kneel with them. What bothers me is people that's never sacrificed anything is going to have something to say about that. And see, that's part of freedom. See, just like I believe in the Ku Klux Klan got the right to march. They got the right to do anything they want to do. And we got the right to march against them. Now, if you want to kneel at a football game, go ahead. I'll fight your right to do that. Now, they're trying to switch it around to us about the flag. It's not about the flag. It's about the way black people are treated by the police. Because it's been going on ever since I was a teenager, and it's going on today. People are getting shot unnecessary, just like on the news when that police told that white lady, "Oh, we shoot black folks." White folks say, "Oh, he probably was joking," but black folks say he's serious as the Board of Health. He's serious. He will shoot you, and just like me, I've got stopped in Henderson here, and the young man pulled the gun on me, and when the sergeant got up, I said, "Well, you know, Mike, why did he pull that gun on me?" And the police are saying, "I'm sorry." The sergeant saying, "I'm sorry, sir," blah, blah, blah. And we got to talking. They went over my information. And like I explained to him, he didn't have no business pulling that gun on me. So if these people want to kneel at a football game, I defend their right to do it. And if I'm a Vietnam veteran, so I serve my country. And I serve my country so they can have the right to do that.
How about the guys that serve their country, that feel that if the flag or the national anthem is there, do you see that perspective? And
oh yeah.
How do you feel about that?
That's their perspective. I mean, that's their right. They got a right just like I got a right. I defend their right too.
I think the owners, because these guys are doing it on their job, right? This is
no.
Their job.
See, that goes back to this shooting in Las Vegas. When is the time that you discuss this? I mean, when is a good time? Where's a good place? You know, just like if they
we got about 1 minute, so we got to do this real fast. But so you think that what's happening is the way it should be happening?
Correct.
Okay.
Because they have the right to do that. I went to Vietnam and got rained on, shot at for them to have the right to do that.
Okay. Well, one last thing. Look in the camera. And by the way, thanks so much for being here. This is a really interesting subject.
Thank you.
For those out there that maybe are thinking something differently, you know, that don't understand your perspective, what do you want to say to them?
What I want to say is everybody got a different perspective, and everybody got to look back on their life that they lived. Now, my perspective is one perspective. Yours is another one, but we got to agree to disagree.
Oh, very good. Well, Charles, thanks again, and thanks for being here. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week, same time. Bye-bye, everybody.